person. You could have been somewhere in a life that never happened. There is a version of you, the one who took that other job, who said yes instead of no, who stayed in that city, who left when they should have left, who said the thing they were too afraid to say. That version of you is still out there, not literally, but somewhere in your mind, they exist, living a life that branched off from yours. At some moment, you probably did not even realize was a turning point at the time, and every once in a while, usually when you least expect it, you think about them. It does not take much to summon them. A song from a specific year of your life, a city you almost moved to, a person you almost stayed with, a version of your career you almost chose. And for a moment, you wonder, not with regret exactly, something quieter than that. You wonder who you would have become, what your face would look like if that life had been the one you lived, whether you would be happier or just differently tired, whether that version of you ever thinks about this one, the one who is actually living, the one who is actually here. I think this is one of the strangest forms of grief that exists, because you cannot grieve a person who never existed. You cannot mourn a life that never happened. There is no funeral for the version of you that almost was. No one sends flowers. No one asks if you are okay, because from the outside, nothing was lost. Your actual life kept going. You built things. You became someone, but somewhere quietly inside you, a door closed on a life you will never get to live. And some part of you still stands in front of that door sometimes, just looking at it. I do not think this means you made the wrong choice. That is important to say clearly. The version of you that could have been is not necessarily happier, is not necessarily more fulfilled, is not necessarily living some better life that you tragically missed. That version simply exists in your imagination as a story without consequences, without the bad days, without the doubts that life would have carried too. We only ever picture the highlight reel of the lives we did not live. We never imagine the version of us who also lies awake at night wondering about something else they almost chose. Because every life, every single one, has its own quiet ache built into it. The road you did not take did not lead to a life without pain. It just led to a different kind. But here's what I think is actually true, and it is harder to sit with than simple regret. It is not that you miss that other life. It is that you miss believing you could become anyone before you chose, before the years added up, before the responsibilities and the routines and the version of you that actually exists started to feel permanent. There was a moment when every version of your life was still possible, when you had not yet become anyone in particular, when the future felt like 100 open doors instead of the one you eventually walked through. And maybe that is what you are actually grieving, not the specific other life, but the feeling of limitless possibility that fades a little more every year. You live the one you actually chose. And I want to say something gently here. That feeling, that grief for the unlimited person you used to be able to become, it does not mean your actual life is small. It does not mean you settled. It simply means you are a person who became something specific, which is the only way to ever become anything at all. You cannot live every version of your life. No one can. Becoming someone means closing every door you did not walk through. That is not failure. That is simply what it means to exist inside time, to be a person, instead of 1,000 unfinished possibilities. So if you find yourself thinking about that other version of you tonight, the one who took the other path, I do not think you need to chase them, or compete with them, or wonder if they did it better. I think you can just let them exist, quietly, as a kind of companion. A reminder that you were once someone who could have gone anywhere, and instead, you went here, to this life, the one with your actual face in it, your actual hands, your actual history, imperfect and specific and entirely yours. And maybe the person you could have been was never supposed to replace you. Maybe they were only ever supposed to remind you of how much possibility you carried once, and how much of it quietly became this, became you, standing exactly here, in the only life you will ever actually get to live before it fades.